Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this, our second information webinar for the Northern Australia Development Program. Brenda, I can see you. I wonder if you can give me a thumbs up if the sound is coming through okay.
Sound is sounding really good, Linda. I can hear you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much. For those of you that I've not met before, my name is Linda Lee, and I'm the General Manager of the Office of Northern Australia based in Darwin. And delighted to be talking to you this morning to share some insights on the Northern Australia Development Program, or the NADP. Very pleased to have you here, and very pleased with the interest in the program so far. So without any further delay, I'm going to turn my video off so you can focus on some of the PowerPoints that we'll be putting up in front of you. So as I said, we've had strong interest in the program, and we have really been overwhelmed for the support for the program. And I think that's in a large part due to the range of our partners that have helped us promote the program. So thank you to all of those that have been either showing interest or sharing it with other businesses. And I would include in that our Regional Development Australia organisations who've done a great job in spreading it to those businesses that they deal with on a daily basis. So I'm confident that interest will translate into some really quality projects that will all help us collectively develop the North. So I wanted to say thank you to the Office of Northern Australia team for bringing this webinar together. I'll introduce you to a couple of those people as they present during our webinar this morning. But a special shout out to Jessica Wright here in the Darwin office, who will be moderating through Slido, and we'll come back to that shortly. Details will be on the screen. So just in terms of housekeeping before I do launch into the presentation proper, if I could please ask that you remain on mute during the webinar. And if it helps the quality of the sound or the picture at your end, you might be better off with your video off. And I also need to inform you, you will have seen a button pop up as you jumped into the webinar that today's webinar is being recorded, and the recording of the webinar will be made available to you online through the ONA's YouTube channel. So we wanted to allocate as much time as possible today to your questions. So I just wanted to note that we won't be focusing on specific questions for individual projects. It's more of a generic discussion about the program and the processes for applying. But we will provide you with some contact details about where you can go for more information, and where you might go to have a more detailed discussion on the program. So just to head back to the Slido issue, you will see that the hands up function on Zoom has been disabled, but if you use Slido, you'll be able to log your questions online. So to start, I wanted to acknowledge the traditional custodians on the land on which we meet today, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. I want to extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people present today. We're coming to you from Larrakia country in Darwin this morning, but I do recognise that there'll be people joining us from all over Northern Australia and Australia as well. So to give you some brief overview of the Northern Australia Development Program, it's really, I guess, evolved from a stakeholder message that the Office of Northern Australia has consistently received around, I guess, the gap in skills and capability, and that hurdle of getting businesses off the ground. And that includes funding for feasibility studies or access to capital. So the design of the program is really about helping businesses take that step to grow and to diversify and to build resilience into their businesses. And that's all businesses across Northern Australia, including Indigenous businesses. So we are very cognizant that there are some different operating conditions in Northern Australia in terms of, that narrow economic base, the high costs and the additional risk of doing business. So this program is really targeted at addressing those issues and helping businesses to grow, because we know that businesses are a really important part of the Australian economy, and more important, you could argue, in Northern Australia, where small and medium enterprise really forms the backbone of that economy, accounting for 98% of employing businesses in the private sector compared to 68% nationally. So we know that supporting those businesses to grow and diversify is a key lever in growing the economy overall. So the program has two streams, we refer to them as, or two components. One is the business development grant, and one is the industry transformation grant. So business development grants are really targeted at the smaller businesses, so small to medium sized businesses up to 199 employees, whereas the industry transformation grants are really targeted at medium to larger sized businesses with 20 or more employees. So the business development grant offers between $50,000 to $2 million, and that, as I've said, is to really help businesses to grow, whether that's through firming up a business concept or actually investing in infrastructure or training or something to change the way that you're doing business at the moment. The industry transformation grant is really targeted at bigger projects between $3 million and $10 million that are going to transform an industry or provide a transformational effect to your region. So the program is $111.9 million overall, and that's across both streams. And I might talk briefly to eligibility criteria for the program. So you can see from that slide, it's pretty clear. I've already said that business development grants are for small to medium businesses, and because it's a co-funding arrangement, there's a minimum eligible project of $100,000 required. Whereas for the industry transformation grants, again, you need to have a business that has more than 20 employees and a project that's at least $6 million worth of eligible expenditure. In terms of those eligibility criteria, basically you need to have an ABN and be an incorporated entity or an incorporated trust, and be a trading organisation. So in terms of demonstrating your, sorry, I'm on the wrong slide here. I should be talking to regions of growth. Which I guess what I need to say here is that in the last budget, you may be aware that the government announced a package for our North, Our Future, and that was building on the white paper, which outlines a 20-year strategic vision, and Our North, Our Future sets out the plan for the next 5 years, 21 to 26. So there was nearly $190 million worth of investment for Northern Australia, and that was to build on existing government initiatives such as job creation and digital connectivity, as well as helping businesses to scale up and diversify. So the investment in that 5-year plan was across 3 initiatives. One is the regions of growth. The second one was Connecting Northern Australia, which was specific and dedicated investment in infrastructure for connectivity through the Regional Connectivity Program and the Mobile Black Spots Program, and the third being the Northern Australia Development Program. So the regions of growth was really a framework to focus investment in Northern Australia. It took the approach of I guess building on existing infrastructure and existing priorities across governments to focus on infrastructure and building supply chains, and really using a concerted effort instead of spreading our investment across the whole of Northern Australia in specific areas to, I guess, build in and leverage investment to see if we couldn't raise that rate of growth in particular areas. So the 4 regions of growth are Townsville to Mount Isa, Cairns to Gladstone, Broome to Kununurra to Darwin, and the Beetaloo Basin to the Darwin Port in the Northern Territory. So it's important to point out that the regions of growth, as I said, are a small part of Northern Australia. The map there shows where Northern Australia is located. You can see that the white paper, and for most definitions, we refer to Northern Australia being the areas above the Tropic of Capricorn and including the whole of the Northern Territory. The white areas that are shaded on that map also include areas that are included in the Northern Australia Infrastructure Facility definition. So while this program is applied to Northern Australia, being Tropic of Capricorn and the whole of NT, if you are not in a regional growth or in that area below the Tropic of Capricorn in Queensland and WA, you are not excluded. It just means that you need to demonstrate what the benefit to the north is. And for regions of growth in particular, you will receive a priority for being in those areas because the government is really signalling its intention to focus on those areas, but it does not exclude you. Okay, so the eligibility criteria I did talk about out of order. I do apologise, but you can see that there it's pretty clear. Business development grants are for small to medium businesses. Industry transformation grants are for medium to large businesses. And in terms of business eligibility, a trading corporation with an ABN. So in terms of the key dates, you might be aware that the program guidelines were actually released at the end of September, and applications opened last week from Thursday the 4th of November. There will be a first round of assessment for applications received before the 10th of December, and then grants will be announced in February next year. So we will talk a little bit more in detail in terms of the application process, but I might move on to more information about the assessment criteria. So the business development grants have two specific criteria. One is around demonstrating how your project will create new jobs, diversify or build resilience. And one is about your capacity as a business and the capability and resources available to deliver your project. For industry transformation grants, again, the same criteria, except an additional middle criteria, which talks about how your project will diversify or grow business and, I guess, add to the value of the region. So in terms of eligible activities, there's a whole range of things that are eligible under the program, including buying, constructing, installing plant and equipment, construction and fit out of new infrastructure, training and skills development, as I've mentioned, feasibility studies or business cases to bring your project to the point where it's investment ready, business planning and marketing activities, process design and engineering, supporting costs associated with preparation of statutory approval applications and other activities relating to scaling up. So I just wanted to be really clear about these assessment criteria and that you need to address all assessment criteria in your application. And the criteria are actually of equal weight. So you need to provide your best evidence to support answers for all criterion, and you must score at least 50% against each criterion. So you need to pass each of the criterion. And it's also super important that you put a business plan in with your application. So in terms of the way that your application will be assessed, step one is to check on your eligibility, and I've talked about that, and that's in terms of trading corporation with an ABN. Step two is assessment of your application against the criteria. Should it meet that step, then it will go to a third step, which is assessment by an independent committee who will make recommendations And then step 4 is that decisions will be made by our Minister, Minister Littleproud, who is Minister for Northern Australia. I also just wanted to make you aware of the way the program is being rolled out. So the Office of Northern Australia sits within the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development and Communications. And we are what we call in, I guess, Australian government terms, the policy holders. So we're responsible for, I guess, the evolution of the program and then policy calls around the program. The Business Grants Hub, which sits in the Department of Industry, is actually responsible for administering the program. So they're the people that will process applications and check eligibility against the criteria. Oz Industry, which is our third delivery partner, also sits within the Department of Industry, and they will be providing specialist business advisory services to those eligible businesses. One component of the program that I haven't talked in detail about is the Strengthening Northern Australia Business Program. And as I said, that's specialist advice to help businesses where they need some further support to grow their business. Oz Industry, you may be familiar with your local representative. There are 4 regional managers operating across the north, and they can assist with information about all the programs run through Oz Industry, including grants and other services. So now I'm going to hand over to Adrian. Adrian is going to give us some information specifically about how you might prepare your application. So over to you, Adrian.
Thanks, Linda. Someone online give me a thumbs up or let me know they can hear me okay?
Yeah, perfectly. Thank you, Adrian.
Excellent. Thank you. Hi, everyone. I am the Central Queensland Regional Manager for Oz Industry. So the previous slide showed there was 4 regional managers that cover the Northern Australia area. For those that haven't had anything to do with the regional manager, we are the on-the-ground representatives for Oz Industry, out available to talk to businesses about their projects and what they're doing, and advise on what grants and funding and programs are available to help them grow, diversify or innovate. So we're working very closely with the Office of Northern Australia to communicate this opportunity to the businesses in our networks. So I've probably just going through some of the information that Linda's already covered, but in a bit more detail to what I guess I usually go through with a client who's come to me to talk to them about applying, and some of the information I give them and what I discuss with them. So firstly, you know, on the business.gov.au site, on the page for both these streams are the guidelines, sample application and a few other documents, particularly the template for what the accountant, your accountant needs to sign. So, you know, we advise firstly, download those documents and read them very carefully, particularly the guidelines. Have a look at what the information says around what is eligible. Linda's mentioned that it's clear, you know, make sure that the entity that you're going to put on the application form or that's applying for funding meets those criteria, because sometimes businesses have a number of entities. So make sure that the entity that you're applying for on the Grants Hub meets that criteria. Have a look at the sample application as well. The way the process works is that it's an online grant application. So you have to log in and create a profile for it, and then everything gets uploaded and is online. So what is of value is to download the sample application so you can see the type of questions that you're going to get asked. Aside from the assessment criteria, there's other questions that are asked that about your business, but also about the project. So it's a good idea to download that and work, you know, from that to understand what the information that you need to pull together. Probably a few things to start with. Obviously, have a discussion with your accountant. They need to sign off on that your business has the ability to do the match funding. So ideally have a discussion with your accountant early to make sure they're comfortable with what you're doing and what you're proposing, and that they're willing to sign the paperwork that's required for that. The next step is obviously to, as I said, eligibility, make sure your entity is eligible, look at the objectives of the project. So at the start of the guidelines, it clearly states what the objectives are for this program. The key part is obviously for the small to medium businesses, for scale up and diversification. And then for the larger program is for significant growth or transformation of their industry, all within Northern Australia. So you need to really make sure that your project that you have in mind meets those objectives. So you need to sit down and think about how you're going to tell the story around those objectives that meets that assessment criteria. So the assessment criteria, as they've gone through, very important. The processes meet the eligibility, and then it's assessed, has to meet 50% of the markings for the per criteria when assessed by the panel. And then you go into the competitive pool. So there will be pretty much you're competing against other applicants once you reach that stage. So it is really crucial that you put effort into your application and you tell the story well about your project. Other things that you need to look at when reading the guidelines as well is understand what is eligible activity and what is not eligible. And there are clear examples in that in the guidelines, but if you have any questions, please get in contact with your regional manager or through the grants hub to find out what is eligible and to get more information around that, because you need to have that minimum project expenditure that is eligible. So 100,000 for the smaller grant program, and then I think it's $6 million for that larger grant program. So you need to make sure that you've got eligible expenditure, and also that you understand the timeframes of this project. Businesses need to make sure that they're not starting the project prior to receiving notification from the government that they're able to for the costs that they've set aside for it, so that are eligible. So, you know, there's been situations in the past where sometimes, you know, you've got to make sure that you're willing to make sure you've got enough time. It's not something you need to start tomorrow, that you can wait potentially till February when you're notified to start your start that element of the project. If you're working in various stages and you've already started stage 1, but you're applying for funding for stage 2, 3, and 4, then that's fine. That's what your project is about, type thing. You can tell the story from stage 1 to stage 7, but that's stage 2 to stage 5 is what you're applying for, and you need to have that timing work into alignment with when the timing is for eligibility of when you can work on this project and spend the money. Start your application now. So log on and create your profile if you haven't done already in the Grants Hub. Don't leave it to the last day to open up your account. You can start it now. You can start filling in some of the basic information that's in your address, some of the data that it collects as well. And then you can drop in the main bits of content as you have them ready. So it is based on character count. So you do need to be aware of that with some of the word limits that are there, or character limits. So you do kind of need to test what you're putting in, put it in there and make sure that you can see it all. So please be aware that, you know, there is a word limit to some of what the content that you can provide as well. The other tip as well is to link, because of the character count, make sure you're keeping it really concise and clear and telling the story, but you can refer to more information into your project plan. So if you're addressing something in your assessment criteria, make sure you provide the basic information, but then refer to further information is provided on page X of my project plan, so that you can kind of deal with it that way, and it ties in where the information is in the attachment that you've uploaded. Keep in mind with this, obviously this is a Northern Australia program. It goes all of, you know, Queensland, Northern Territory, Western Australia. The independent panel that will making this assessment are not necessarily from your region. They are not maybe familiar or experts of your industry. So you have to be really clear and really good business storytelling about your project, about how it meets the objectives, about how it is going to, compete and be better than some of the other applicants there. So you have to be really spend time telling the story, but providing the information that is required to the assessors so that they can mark it against the points that are listed in the assessment criteria. So some of the things that list in the guidelines is about how it meets the criteria, the value with relevant money that is provided, as I mentioned, the overall objectives of the grant, how it meets with that, the evidence that is provided, which I'll go into a bit more about that, and then the relative value of the grant sought. So it's really helpful to have someone that's not closely associated with the project read your application to make sure they understand what you're discussing and don't have any kind of major questions or this isn't clear. So sometimes we're all a bit too close to our projects, and it's helpful to have someone who is not as close to read it and just make sure that you are clearly articulating your project and what the value is of it and how it meets the objectives. I did want to highlight with this particular grant that some of the elements around the assessment criteria, that it does look at what the benefits your project will provide to the region and wider socio-economic benefits. So it's asking you to provide evidence or explain what value it's going to add. You need to look at how your project will add value to the region in which you operate. For example, if you're going to apply for funding for a project that doubles, the size of your business, that would require you to potentially engage more from your current supply chain. So they also will benefit from it because they may need to employ more people, or they may need to purchase more things to products to support you. So that's the story that needs to be told in your application around that particular criteria. You also need to look at, what technology you're introducing, what new industry will be able to educate the future generations. What new opportunities will you provide to the region that's not already there? How, again, there's also some, you've got to provide evidence and data around this as well. So you can discuss this potentially with your council. Some councils have access to what's called REM plan data and can help you work out some of the calculations around that if you increase your business by so much, what that may mean for the flow-on effects to the supply chain as well. They also ask about jobs. So it's important to provide detailed information about the new skills training that might be there for existing employees as well, not just the amount of new people that you might be able to put on, but talk about what the new technology or what you're doing diversification wise will require for training of existing staff and how they may upskill. Give specifics where you can to make it more credible and not just say, don't just say new staff or existing staff will be upskilled. How will they be upskilled? What specifically training will you need to do? So it gives it more credible and shows that you actually put thought into this and there is actually a plan to it. The other thing is definitely don't leave anything unanswered in the assessment criteria because that's what they are marking on. If you don't think you can have that direct experience, particularly with assessment criteria where it talks about experience with similar projects, talk about how you're going to call on and, identify what skills and expertise you will bring into your business to do this project, or, what experience or have you got existing that's relatable. If you've done similar projects or something that's not quite similar, but you've been able to use similar management skills. Explain that in that question. Don't leave things unanswered. If you are doing a new project and you haven't had experience in that, draw upon your experience in other projects or how you will employ someone to do it and what specific skill set you'll be bringing into the organisation to do that. You need to provide, so there's, I think, 4 or 5 attachments that you have to upload, quite specific. One being the accountant's declaration, which is provided as a template. So you can download that and send it to your accountant to get them to sign it. The other's project budget and a project plan. So you need to provide these documents quite clearly and outline what you're doing with this, with your project, and that's where you provide a lot of the context, the planning, the processes, your risk assessment, the timing. There's milestones listed in that you have to fill out in the application, but you also may have that in your project plan so that you've got it aligned to your budget and the processes and when you need to buy things. Also include in your project plan the market analysis. So you do need to identify if you're looking for growth that there is growth there. That's where you can call upon industry papers or research that identify that there is opportunities export-wise, or that there is industry growth available and what the need is going to be going forward, so that you can clearly provide the evidence that there is that market opportunity. Please be aware that there is a size limit to the documents that you can upload, so that files must be smaller than 2 megabytes, and there are specific types. It's Word documents. Obviously probably doing a PDF is best, JPEGs, but probably best just to PDF everything in the project plan and the project budget. So particularly with some of your funding, or if you have project partners, you need to provide letters of support. That has to be included in your project plan file. So just be aware, again, don't leave that to the last minute to check that your project plan is of the right size and that will upload, because otherwise, you're in trouble trying to take pages out at the last minute. So, my advice is don't do anything too fancy with the cover sheet. You don't need lots of graphics in there unless it's relevant as a diagram. You don't need lots of photos, again, unless it's relevant. You don't need to put pictures in unless it's clearly relevant, because it is only that 2 megabyte size. So you have to be quite careful about what you put in your documents to make sure you're not going over that. So that's about everything I've got, unless there's other questions that people have for me specifically, but clearly just to say your regional managers are here to help. We're happy to discuss your project with you and determine whether this is something worthwhile putting your time and effort in to apply for. We certainly can provide advice on that, on your eligibility and your application. Plus, obviously, if not, we can happy to discuss other federal government opportunities that might be suitable for you. But yeah, please get in contact with one of your regional managers if you wish to discuss your project.
Great, thank you, Adrian. That's super helpful. I think it's really good to have your insights into the application process, having done it on numerous occasions before. So I'm sure everyone found that very helpful. So what we might do now is throw to our co-presenters. Brenda McAuliffe is our Director of Strategy based in Cairns, and Jan Clinlan is our Assistant Director of Strategy. She's based in Canberra. And Brenda and Jan are going to answer your questions that are coming through on Slido. And Brenda, I understand that you might go through some of the more frequently asked questions first off.
Yeah, that's right. I think Jan was going to, we'll go through those to start with that we've had from a number of applicants.
Lovely. Thank you, Brenda. Can you hear me okay, Brenda?
Yes.
Yep. Can you see me on the screen?
Yep.
Lovely. Yep. Okay, ready for some questions. The first question is, what are the ROGs and do I have to be in one to apply? Which I think Linda kind of covered, but do you have to be in a ROG to apply?
Thanks, Jan. No, you don't need to be in a ROG to apply. As Linda outlined, being in a ROG provides you with a prioritisation. It is not a requirement of the program to be in a ROG. The requirement is that your project is either located in Northern Australia or it provides benefit into Northern Australia. That's what makes you eligible to be able to apply for the program. Being in a ROG provides you with some prioritisation in the assessment process.
Lovely. Does the business need to be based in Northern Australia, and or does the project need to occur in Northern Australia?
So If you're based in Northern Australia, which the definition is above the Tropic of Capricorn in Queensland and WA and all of Northern Territory, if you are located in that space, then you're either your project or your business, then you are eligible. But you are also eligible if you're located outside of that boundary, if your project provides benefit into Northern Australia. So I want to be quite clear on that you can be outside of that boundary if your project provides benefit into Northern Australia. And so that's where it's really important, as Adrian had pointed out, really detailing that in your project plan and talking about the opportunity that you're capitalising on or that you're looking to take forward with your project and how that benefits Northern Australia.
Lovely, thank you. This is a finance query. The 50% contribution, can you use other grants?
Yes, so with the co-contribution investment, you can source that from a range of different sources and be eligible. It can come from private investment, it can come from your bank account, it can come from a loan from a financial establishment, it can be from a grant from another government program, which could be local government, state or Commonwealth. You do need to check the reverse. However, other grant programs sometimes won't use another grant as a co-contribution, but for our particular project, you can look at your co-contribution from any of those sources. What's not included is in kind. So in kind does not make up a percentage of your co-contribution. It does need to be dollars.
Great, thank you, Brenda. What is ONA's role in the grant program?
Okay, so Office of Northern Australia are the policy owners for this particular program. So the program's administered through the Business Grants Hub, which is why in the first instance, if you have questions, then I would encourage you to ring their 13 number so that you can ask the Business Grants Hub your question, as they are administering the program, and then they will also update any questions that they see regularly into their frequently asked questions. If it's a complex question, then they will come to us as the policy owners to resolve that.
Terrific. The SNAB, the Strengthening Northern Australia Business, who are the SNAB facilitators, and will it be open to consultants to provide this service?
So the Small Business Advisory Service is being provided through AusIndustry as well. They'll be providing those facilitators, and they're in the process of looking at those at the moment.
Right. Brenda, when can I start incurring costs for my project?
So as Adrian pointed out, you cannot start incurring costs that will be eligible as part of your grant until you have been advised that you are successful. If you need to undertake one of those activities prior to being told you're successful, you can undertake it, but it then won't be eligible for reimbursement as part of the grant. So it doesn't make your grant ineligible, but what it means is that would then be removed. So you just need to be careful if your project is very close to the line of the minimum grant size. So if your project is $105,000 and you want to undertake an activity that's $4,000 prior, that's fine. You're still going to be over the line in your project value. If, however, you needed to undertake an activity that was $20,000 prior to being advised, then that would drop your project under that $100,000 value, which is then not eligible. So you just need to keep that in mind, that you can't incur costs and them be eligible for inclusion in the grant prior to being notified that you're successful.
That's good to know. The next question is, will applications be accepted for projects currently in progress or only new projects?
So as Adrian pointed out, you can have a project that has multiple stages. So if your project is already halfway through, those costs that you've already incurred are not eligible, but you may have broken your project down into many stages, and the stages that you haven't commenced could form your application for this grants program.
Great. Can local councils apply?
No, local councils are not eligible under this program. To be eligible, you need to be a corporation and you need to be trading.
Terrific. Is there a priority rating for Indigenous-led proposals?
Yes, there is a priority rating for Indigenous organisations. We're very keen to see applications coming in from Indigenous businesses, Indigenous projects, and we're also keen to understand how your project may benefit Indigenous organisations and create Indigenous employment.
Great, that covers that off. How many rounds of funding are planned in case we can't get our application ready by 10th of December? And another question was related, and it was, do we have a date for the second round?
So at this stage, we haven't established the date for the second round. As this is a brand new program, we wanted to see the level of interest and the number of applications and the dollars that were being applied for in the first assessment round. So once we get to the 10th of December, then we'll be able to provide further dates for future rounds. Once we've had a chance to look through the applications that we've received. The grant opportunity is going to remain open. So although we pull that first assessment round on the 10th of December, the program will still remain open because we're very conscious that businesses don't just necessarily have a project that fits within that the period that grant programs are open. So you can then apply after that date, and we will make it public once the dates are agreed on when the next assessment rounds will also close. And we'll also be then in a position to talk about, as we go through and award grants, we'll be able to update the amount of dollars that remain available within that program. Obviously, it will need to close once we hit the $80 million that's available for grants.
Thank you, Brenda. Do you have to be in a specific industry sector to apply? Is there any preference for particular industry sectors?
No, so this program is designed to diversify the economy in Northern Australia and make it more resilient. So we have not gone with any prioritisation around sectors. So your business can be in any sector. I encourage you to talk about the sector that you're in and the opportunity that you're has shown itself of why you want to do your particular project. So talk about what that opportunity is and how you're going to capitalise on it. But there is no priority sector that you need to be in to be eligible for this program.
Lovely, thank you. Can applications be started and saved to gather input and information as you go?
Yes, so in the Business Grants Hub, you create a login and you can go in and out of that and put in information as you're going. As Adrian said, it's really important to do that as soon as you can, and that way you can make sure that you're familiar with the system and you understand that it has worked, and you can also access assistance from Business Grants Hub as soon as possible if you need to, if you're having any problems with that login.
Yep. Am I able to apply for and administer more than one grant under 2 business names?
Yes, so you could put in a second, as far as, well, I need to check that with Business Grants Hub, that the system has the capability, but my understanding is that you could submit 2 different grant applications.
Right, here's another one from Slido. Guidelines state you cannot buy an existing building. Is this an option if we can demonstrate that there is no strategically available building in an essential area?
No, so the guidelines specifically say that you can't buy an existing building and that be eligible for grant funding, which is based on that if you were buying a building, you're also buying land, and we're not in the business of purchasing land and buildings. So no, it's not about purchasing an existing building. It wouldn't mean that you can't have that as part of your project. It just means that it won't be eligible for dollars against, as in for you to have a grant contribute to that cost.
And this is a related one here, Brenda. Can you buy land using grant money and then implement the grant on your own land, like for the agricultural sector?
Sorry, can you say that again, Jen?
Sure. Can you buy land using grant money and then implement the grant on your own land, e.g. the agricultural sector?
So for the first question, no, you can't buy land with the grant money. If you have a project that you're looking to implement and it's made up of eligible activities and you're doing those on land that you already own or that you've purchased outside of the grant process, then yes, your project can be on that land.
That's good. What about renovating a building to run your business from?
Yes, so if you are renovating your building and that relates to your project, then that can be included. What we don't include is if the cost just relates to business as usual, so you running your business as usual, then that's not eligible. But if it relates directly to your project and that's why you need to do those renovations, then that will be an eligible cost.
That's good clarification there. Brand new business here. We have a bookkeeper but no accountant. Do we have to have an accountant to be eligible?
I will need to take that one on notice. I'm pretty sure that you actually need a declaration from an accountant. So I don't think that it will be sufficient for it just to be from a bookkeeper. If you could email the address that'll be provided at the end of this, which is Northern Australia at infrastructure.gov.au, we can come back to you on that one.
Brenda, I can clarify that one because it's similar for all our grants. So I've got the form here. It is, you do have to have an accountant that has, so they're asked to tick a box to say whether they're a chartered CPA certified. So they do have to be part of a, have their professional qualifications. So you to sign that form. So unless a bookkeeper has that, which I'm assuming they're not, because that's why they're a bookkeeper and not an accountant, you do have to have an accountant sign that document.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Adrian.
And that template again is available on the business.gov.au on the grant page for downloading to use. So people can have a look at that to see what it asks.
Thanks, that's great.
Brenda, is there a time limit on spending an approved grant?
Yes, there is, and the projects have to be completed within 3 years.
3 years, is that? Is there any?
Oh, Jen, all I was going to add is that in your application, you will outline what the dates are that you're looking to do this particulars of your project, and if you're successful when you sign up your grant agreement, that will include milestones, and so that will also outline the timing of your project.
That's great. Is there any small project funding available for Indigenous organisations to assist with the application process?
Adrian, you jump in if you're aware of any. There's no specific funding within the Northern Australia Development Program to assist you with your application process. I'm not sure whether there are other grants processes that can provide funding for that. The way ours works is because you're not actually eligible for any activity until you've been told you're successful, those activities prior to being told successful aren't eligible, which would be if you were seeking assistance from somebody else to help you with your application.
Yeah, that's right. There's probably not a lot of funding from the federal government for that type of assistance with putting it together an application. It might be worth probably talking to your local council to see if they're aware of anything specific with that, or because just the timing wise of things, it might be that you could get kind of some state government funding, or there might be other small funding to actually put together a project plan, but just the time that you've done previously. But there's not specific funding that I'm aware of to help write an application.
IBA Australia may. It would be worth checking their website and making contact with them. They may have something available.
Brenda, this is an equipment question. What kind of equipment purchases would be covered by the program? Would it cover computer, digital equipment?
It really comes down to what your project is. So if it's business as usual equipment, it's not eligible. If, however, it relates directly to your project, then it would be eligible. There's some detailed descriptions within the program guidelines, and I would encourage you to read those first, and then consider what your project is and how that piece of equipment relates to your project versus as business as usual activities.
Great. There's a few questions about in-kind contributions and whether you can include a dedicated staff member as a form of in-kind contribution.
So again, I would point you in the direction of the guidelines because they're quite specific about what wages can or can't be included in the project. In-kind is not counted as in just the work that they're like as a general rule in relation to the co-contribution. With the labour side of it, I'd point you to the guidelines to really look at the detail. It depends on the level of the position, of what role that person is doing.
Thank you, Brenda. Someone's asked, is 2 megabytes the size as a maximum for lodgement? Adrian might know that.
Adrian,
Yes.
I was going to say, Adrian, can you jump in on that one?
No, definitely is, because I checked that this morning because it actually doesn't say it. So I have checked that with program this morning, that it is definitely has that restriction on our grants upload hub. Look, it actually isn't, you'd be surprised if you PDF it, well, you can actually get into 2 megabytes, but that's why I just said to be careful about your graphics, your photos and things like that as well. There is certainly a lot of content. But I mean, keeping in mind, I understand you think it's not a lot. The assessors can't actually digest endless hundreds of pages of information. So you just have to be quite clear and concise about the information that you do put in.
Yeah, it's good advice.
So Jan, I'm not sure who's in control. I know there's some questions about their contacts in Townsville and Northern Territory. I don't know if it's able to quickly flick back to the page with the details for the 4 of the regional managers on the slides there that they can show so people can note them down, because they are able to, I think it's going backwards. Yeah, the next one. That one there. So people can scribble those down, the phone numbers or the email address for the relevant people. Just to confirm, so the difference between myself and Renee, Renee is based in Townsville, goes down, covers to Ayr, so everything from Ayr north out to the border, so includes Mount Isa, Cloncurry and so forth. I cover from Bowen down to Gladstone and then west to the border, so I cover the 7 central Western Queensland councils as well. So that's kind of the difference between myself and Renee. Tim's obviously quite clear, Northern Territory, he's the whole of Northern Territory, and Marty is the contact for everyone in that Northern Australia area in Western Australia.
Thank you, Adrian. That's terrific. How are we going for time? Maybe 2 more questions, Brenda?
Yep, and then we should wrap it up with those the details at the end of where people can go for any further questions.
Great. Is R&D an eligible activity?
So no, R&D is not an eligible activity. Again, I would get you to go to the guidelines to read the detail on this space. So if it's around process engineering and design and you're about to launch this into a project, that's fine. We're not at the end where you're doing the initial R&D to look at where a particular concept, but there's quite some detailed information in the guidelines on this.
Lovely. People are asking if they're able to get a copy of the slides for the webinar.
Yes, so we'll we'll be putting the presentation on the Northern Australia YouTube channel. That will be included up there, and I'm not sure if we're also emailing that out to applicants.
Lovely. We've also got a couple of extra questions. So the questions we don't get to, we can answer after the webinar.
So we can, however, if you have a question, I would encourage you in the first instance to go to the 1300 number if we haven't answered it. If, however, you wish to email us so that we have your details to be able to get back to you, that address will come up at the end of this presentation.
Thank you, Brenda.
Yep, so those details are up there now. So in the first instance, I would encourage you to contact business.gov.au and look at the grant opportunity and read through the guidelines. If you would like to talk to them, there's a 132846 number there, or you can email us directly at the Northern Australia at infrastructure.gov.au mailbox.
Thanks very much,
just like to say,
Brenda.
Yep, no, perfect,
I was
Linda,
just
you
about
go.
to say the same thing as you, Brenda. So I'm about to say the same thing. Thank you all for your participation. If you are interested in a copy of the slides, we're more than happy to send those out. So if you would like to send an email to Northern Australia at infrastructure.gov.au, we can certainly provide those. And we will also be sending out a link to ONA's YouTube channel for the whole of today's session. So once again, thank you very much. I hope you found that informative, and we are very much looking forward to your applications. We would really like to see the great ideas that are going to come through to help you grow your businesses and to grow Northern Australia as well. So thank you very much, and we hope to see your applications soon.